understand that my wife pushed those babies out. Those are hers. And there's a different dynamic. Welcome to The Blended. My name is Erick Armstead. I'm your host today. I'm here with Ann, and today we're going to discuss a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, and introducing The Blended.
The only father that I really knew, my nuclear family, was my mom, my stepdad, and my brother, who came 8 years after I was born. And that can be a difficult relationship to manage. At first, everything was hunky-dory. I was daddy's little girl. But, you get into the teenage years and things can change. And I know, Eric, you had a similar experience being the father of 5, with 2 of those children not being your biological children.
Yeah, it was different, to say the least, but I was that dad who had 2 children that really, really dug me. I was the cool dad until a few years later, when you hit different parts of your life. And when that happened, things change, and it's kind of drastic.
All I knew growing up was my stepfather and my mother as a couple, as a married couple. That was mom and dad. I did understand that my biological father was my biological father. I understood the difference, but the dad, day in, day out, changing diapers, picking me up from school, taking me to daycare, buying back to school supplies, all that, Dad 365 was my stepfather. And I took that for granted for a long time until I was an adult, when I fully understood the difference between what my stepfather was doing 24/7, 365, than what my father was able to do, not living in the same household as I was.
Wow, what a different vantage point, because from my vantage point, I didn't raise them from 3, right? So I came in at 8. I came in at 8 and 7. And so from my vantage point, it was developing new habits, and of course looking like the shiny marble. Not too much discipline in the beginning, walking kind of easy around them, and from that going and getting to know them and developing love for them, and then from that going into what's normal as a father, and that is the opposite of, or not the opposite, but discipline, of course, and structure. And my background in my household came from structure, so of course that is what I would try to put with the children.
And that's a conversation you have to have with the spouse, be it a woman, mom, or dad. Whoever's coming in being the step parent has to play that role and own it if they choose, if that's the kind of dynamic of your relationship,
Right.
And in that case, it was because the children were so young. It's one thing if you're coming into, the older kids and they're already raised and whatever. It's more of a respect situation at that point. But when you're really raising kids, you have to have that discussion with the spouse and say, okay, I'm really going to own this and really be a parent in all ways, in love and always, tough love, and the fun times too.
It's funny because that transition started off kind of happy. It started off kind of, so we empty out the dishes. Oh, okay, well, we can see emptying out the dishes. Mm-hmm. My kids laugh sometimes on how we used to fold the socks. We fold the socks. And remember, I'm repeating what I seen in my household growing up as a kid. I remember the first time when there was a tad implementation, and we were driving somewhere, and my one daughter started playing with the door. And so I looked back and I said, hey, don't play with the door, right? Okay. She looked at me like I was crazy, and she kept doing it. And I said, hey, I asked you, don't do that, right? It's very dangerous playing with the door, right? So she just looked at me and kind of went back to it. And I said, hey, young lady. So voice octave changed. Hey, young lady. That daddy voice came out. That little bit of lion came out, right? Because, of course, what's a lion without its roar, right? Mm-hmm. So that came out, and she looked at me, took her hand off of it. And I think from there, it was, okay, I cracked it open. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong now. I think my wife peered over at me. I'm almost.
She had a moment of.
She had a moment like, what did you? And then from there, once my girlfriend at the time looks at me, she looks at me, gives me this kind of snargly looking look, and you can determine what snargly is. That's up to you, right? But snargly to me is like, right? Because this is new to her too now, right? So once she looks at me and everybody looks at me, and then I sit there in this endless pit in my chair, just kind of like I'm by myself right now. But I was raised by Billy Armstead, my daddy, and guess what? I'm sure he sat there many a times with his woman and me and my brother and sisters and was like, I'm gonna sit on this perch because I'm stand on principle. This is how it has to be. And then from there, it was pretty rapid in how it came, because I think that was one of the first times there become challenge. The glory comes later. And when you think about the journey, because it is a journey raising any children, but raising a child that has the ability to say to you, you ain't my daddy, or you ain't my mama, you really take in consideration that your glory will come later if you stay the course. So that was, once I made the decision to turn around and be a raiser and raise these children, once I made that decision, I knew I was all in. And that being said, sometimes you're up against everybody, and you will, man or woman. Maybe you're coming in as a father, and you're bringing and you have kids, and you're taking care of those kids. Well, those are your babies. Number one, I love my wife, and number two, these are kids, and that's where that mantra, the glory comes later. Because if I make a decision to raise, then I cannot do it halfway, right? If I make a decision, and remember, it's a value system. So my value system tells me these certain things. For example, dating, boys, big deal in my family, big deal because I have girls, big deal in the presentation of yourself, whatever religion you happen to be in, or what religion you came from. All these things is when it's time to raise a child, we want them to be strong, able-bodied, in my case, women that are able to tackle this world and need themselves until they pair with another human being.
Moving forward, your relationship with the children changed. How did that affect the relationship with your wife? What was that conversation like? Because I'm sure after that car ride, when you guys had a quiet moment to yourself, she went, what happened in the car? Or something to that effect. Right. And had that conversation happened prior to that moment, or did it happen post that moment? Did you have the conversation and say, listen, at some point I'm going to discipline these kids, or did it just happen and then you had to kind of be reactive instead of proactive?
Right. So navigating that, in the beginning, you throw out small flares. So small flares are like, hey, put that down. Right. Hey, won't you come down from there? Hey, I don't think you should talk to your mom like that. Right, like negotiation. I don't think you should talk to your mom like that. Hey, here was a big one. Hey, let your mom sleep. She's sleeping. Why would you just wake her up so you can ask her if you can have a cookie? Right, like yeah, you can ask me, or you can wait. You know, like you see, she's sleeping. She worked very hard. She deserves a couple winks. Let her sleep. So those are those small flares. But it was signs that this happy, joy life was getting ready to run amok a little bit, like run a little bit afloat, because when I would throw some flares out there, like, hey, let your mom sleep, obviously some of those things would come back at me, right? And so I'm okay, I don't need to sleep. So those were the beginning flares. Imagine as we progressed, a lot of communication, tons of communication, tons of laying in the bed, sort of quiet, and saying to myself, I think I need to bring this up, and trying my best to understand how she was feeling.
Like, from my perspective, it was so much different than yours because I never knew what the relationship between my mother and father looked like, my biological father. I was a toddler. I don't remember it. So all I had was my mom and my stepdad. And with that perspective, it was like, well, my stepdad was always dad. Like, that's just the role he played in my life. So I didn't have to worry about, my mother didn't necessarily have to worry as much with discipline and all that. I don't think what was necessarily they prepared for was once I wasn't a little girl anymore and I start becoming a teenager, and then I get into the more, okay, I truly at 12, 13, 14 understand that my biological dad is my biological dad, and that my stepfather is my stepfather, that my parents were once married, that they're no longer married, that my parents, as I know them, got together like I came from a different, my brother comes from my mom and my dad, but I have a sister who comes from my dad and my stepmother. So you have all these other kind of things playing into, now there's complexities into you're my stepdad. And that as a teenager, you can use that to your advantage to be like, again, even though you've been in my life since I was 3, well, you're not my dad. I don't see the sweat, blood, and tears that he's put into being a father to me because I'm a 13, 14-year-old brat who understands that life's a little easier when I'm with dad. Why? Because dad knows that he's not there every day, and dad wants me to love him, and dad doesn't want me to forget him, and dad doesn't want me to view stepdad as 100% dad because he knows that he's not there all the time, and stepdad is there 24/7, 365, right? So there's all these dynamics that play into a child feeling like their love is conditional. They can take that away from you at any time. But you as a parent, like you said, you chose to raise this child, and your love can't be conditional. And you either have to be 100% in it or out of it. There's no gray. It's black or white.
And it's so true, because what you experienced at 14 or 12 was options. That's what you experienced, right? So you experienced these options that all favored you, right? And that's what happens. And not only did you experience options, but your dad was able to say, your biological dad was able to say what we would call the DS dad, the Toys R Us dad, right? He didn't have to put no work in, right? He had this cookie cutter made for him, right? So some of the behaviors and the disciplines that was taught from your dad was taught. There's work to teach a child how to maneuver in life.
In my situation, I'm the eldest of 3 daughters, and so my 2 other sisters are mostly raised by their moms, and so the conversation from my dad's always like, oh, your mothers did such a good job with you guys. Whereas in my case, it was not only my mother, but my stepfather. My dad got the benefits of the work that my stepfather and my mother put in. He didn't have to do the day in, day out. Did you do your homework? Did you clean your room? Did you, so on and so forth. All that's day in, day out grind. And not for not wanting to be there, but this the structure of divorce and separated families. He lived in an entire different state. That was just the reality of our dynamic, partially because my stepfather was in the military and we moved around a lot. There's a period for 4 years I didn't even see my dad because we lived overseas. And I knew who my dad was. We kept a great relationship via phone. And my mother was really good when I was a child of sending him birthday cards in my name. And when I was a toddler, I couldn't write. Like, the mother being super mindful of that stuff. And super mindful of that stuff for my stepfather as well, for his birthday, for Father's Day, for him, playing that role. So at some point, we got to get your wife in here because I'm sure she had to do a lot of back and forth in that respect, too.
That's a big role that she had to do, right? Like, she had to take on me. I'm a man. Like that's in all of its glory or all of its things that are not so glorious, right? And so we as parents have to make sure that like me and my brother talk about it all the time, we stay the course. That we stay the course on what we believe in, know that this is right, and whatever comes along with that needs to come along with it. So one of the things that came along with it was, of course, me and my wife went from skippity loo, happy go joy joy all day every day, to, man, there's a little bit of quiet time in the bed. Man, these legs are not touching each other like they used to. They used to be wrapped around playing footsies. Now we're trying to play away footsies, right? Because so much emotion. You have to learn how to, and of course you don't do it all right, but you have to learn how to deal with this relationship of being a blended family. And all these different things you have to learn to do together. And I think what keeps me going to that time is, no matter what me and my wife went through, no matter how many quiet arguments, or dare I say loud arguments that we went through, we looked each other in the eye and always said, I love you. And she said it back to me, I love you. And we were very vocal on saying out loud, and sometimes to our kids, we ain't going nowhere. I would be lying if I say our arguments had never spilled over. I mean, you're talking about, this is raw emotion, like this is real, right? But one thing that we did was, we were always able to say, when we had our family meetings, because we would have family meetings, and we would say to each other, okay, it's time, put it on the table. Let's put it on the table. But we would close those family meetings, and sometimes having to let our children know, hey, just so you know, me and mommy ain't going nowhere. Me and mommy's going to be here. We're going to raise you. We're going to make sure we raise you and love you. But we're a team. And sometimes we're going to argue about being on the same team, but we are on the same team. And I think in life, that's where we come with the glory is later. Your glory comes later. And that just simply means stay the course, because once these young people get older, one day they look at you and they say, thanks. And believe it or not, it comes quicker than you think. It's not all the time when they're 30 or 28. Sometimes it's when they're 19 and a half, going into 20, and they've seen some landmines that their counterparts have stepped in. And they say, I remember that. Sometimes it's as simple as this. One time my kids wanted to wear their pajamas to Walmart. Why can't we go to Walmart? I want to go to Walmart. And there was a little fuss in my house about wearing pajamas to Walmart. You're not wearing pajamas to Walmart. You're not wearing slippers to Walmart. You're going to get dressed, and then you can go to Walmart. But it only takes a few short years for them to pick their heads up, look around, and say, hey, Pops. Hey, Pops. Thank you. Well, why are you telling me thank you? Because look. Oh, the SpongeBob SquarePants. Oh, I got you now. I got you. The SpongeBob SquarePants, right? I got you. And so that's that Walmart story, that pajama story, is your glory comes later, because you have protected them, you have shown them, and then they're gonna see, if it's out of love, they're gonna see the way that you took them, the road that you took them, benefited them. Look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself that question. Are you ready? Are you ready? Have you guys created a relationship, meaning boyfriend and girlfriend and boyfriend, that looks to last, that is strong? Like we always say, strong like bull. Because if your relationship is not strong like bull, then I would say you guys need to wait a little bit before you involve yourself into these babies' lives, because you have to make sure your relationship is solid, or the level is nothing like a mama or a daddy seeing their baby cry. Right or wrong, dead wrong. There's nothing like a mama watching her baby. I'll talk for a guy's standpoint, you're not gonna win that battle. So if you're not ready, or if you're not ready to lose some battles, you have to be ready to lose some battles. You have to be ready to say, because you want to win the war. You have to be ready, but you also have to be ready to fight some battles, because you want to win the war. And me and my brother used to always say, hey, some of the things we're gonna fight for, and some of the things we're gonna go to the golf course and play some golf. 2 rounds of it. 36 holes in Florida, 90-degree weather. But we're going to go hang out on the golf course, because you know what? That's a war that I do not need to fight, but I want to. I really, really want to. So you gotta learn to be able to walk away. And like I said, the key is is your relationship forged on steel? Or have you guys had the conversation? Don't meet someone 2 months later talking about you love each other and you're gonna be and they got kids. You can be haphazard with just you and her. Hell, well then you can do whatever you want to do. You can go out and say, "Ooh, we love each other," and you can try to make it work. But when you involve kids, you got to think, if they're young or if they're old, doesn't matter. You got to think these are other brains that are growing, that are watching, that are paying attention, and how are you going to handle that? So yeah, that's what we look for. We look for in the blended. We're going to talk about these different topics. Today it was fun, and let's just keep going on and exploring what that looks like.